I think it's important for people to hear that and know that there are real life consequences to what's happening in education at the moment, whether it's the feminization of society, I guess, or of boys in particular, or the self-hatred of the country. When it comes to our ability to exist as a country, to be able to defend ourselves, like, this stuff is having a tangible impact now. And I think people like to say, oh, it's just sort of a dog whistle talking about how the education system is, raising our kids to not love our country. It's like, no, firstly, it's wrong because it's untrue. I mean, imagine if we as humans, Sam, focused on the worst moments of our lives and just constantly groveled about that. Didn't think about or didn't talk about the positive things that we've done, the good that we've brought. We just focused on the times that we fell short or did bad things. And I think it is linked to the idea of forgiveness and the idea of moving on from the past, which is a Christian pillar. I mean, it is about forgiveness. But I think it's just such a good point that you raise about how this is impacting the way that we function as a country now. And that's why we're really passionate about getting a lot of this self-hatred out of our schools. And we don't think it's not a matter of just putting something in the curriculum where it's like, oh, well, Australian history will be spoken about in a positive light or blah, blah, blah. It has to be a functionality thing. Like you said, the systems, the institutions that run the country are compromised and they're not serving us well. So we need to restructure the education system so you have principals accountable to local parents, to local teachers, not some big blob. And that's how you can get the best outcomes. That's how organically there will be good schools and there will be bad schools, but the good schools will be allowed to flourish. So, I think it's a good point you raised on the institutions and how you can't just tinker around the edges. And again, if there was something in the curriculum that a Conservative party would put in, then they would just change it when a different party came in, which is exactly what happened. I mean, they federalised the curriculum and it's been the biggest mistake. It's been an absolute mess.
So would you want it to go back to the States?
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the States and...
is there an issue there, though, that potentially, let's say, like a Conservative government came in, not the Liberals, someone else, because they're not Conservative, but a Conservative government came in and they put the changes that you want to put in and they pushed it back to state level and they said, you need to do this. But let's say a Peter Malinauskas runs a Labor South Australia, and he says no. Well, what's the to and from them?
Well, I guess...
Sorry, because I see this happening at the moment with Donald Trump and California. Yeah. He's like, hey, we need to get these illegals out. And Gavin Newsom's like, no, fuck you. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So, like, is there an issue there between federal and state?
There is, and that's why it comes to functionality. So I wouldn't... maybe I didn't explain the nuance.
Could you pull their funding or something?
Yeah, I mean, you could pull the funding if individual schools are doing certain things. But the point would be that it is a localized functional system. So they're accountable to parents and to teachers. It's not a matter of just making what the federal government does now, giving that to the states necessarily, and just having them administer, I guess, this indoctrination on a state level. It has to be changed through the system.
Yeah.
So the restructure is the mechanism for a lot of this stuff to go away. So
you want to put it back to the states and then put it back locally as well. The only problem I see with this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that generally the lefty activists that want to push this progressive life, they are normally the loudest, they normally shout the loudest, and they normally push hardest for a lot of these things. And your average Australian will probably just sit back and go, we'll all let them have their way. But that's how this festers. So, like, how would you stop something like that? Because that's my problem with this, is that Australians have that she'll be right attitude. The people that are mentally unbalanced are the people that are pushing these gender ideologies onto people. They're the ones that will probably push harder. They'll shout louder, and they will want these, rules to be put in place for, let's say, gender theory taught in schools. So, like, how would you stop something like that?
Because it comes back to the mechanism, so the funding. So it involve a student voucher system where the money follows the kids. So you're not trapped into a postcode any longer. So there is agency, there's school choice, so that if parents don't like the way that the school's being run and they try to influence it through the mechanisms, through the school boards, and it's captured by the leftists, then they vote with their feet and they move. And then the school starts to get the message, because money is the only thing that gets through to a lot of people. It's really the structure.
Yeah, okay. Again, playing devil's advocate, because I want to break this system down, because it sounds awesome, but I just want to poke some holes in it.
Please do.
What about if we're in a really, really poor area, kids can't move, families can't afford to move. What's your act then? Because like you can't just pick up a family of 5 living out in northern Adelaide where I grew up and then move them to another school if they're living at a home where there's 6 kids and they're struggling to put food on the table. So what's a...
Yeah, well, I think you'd have a system for regional schools and regional students as well. Like they'd have to logically be more support because the services you're providing can only go so far when there are communities that are so far removed from a lot of this stuff. So you'd have to have, naturally, it would be a necessary evil to have a little bit more government intervention on some of these local schools, but the decisions themselves on curriculum, on staffing would still be made at a local level. But you're right, you can't really just say, oh, well, if you fail, you fail. If it's one school within 100k radius out in, Western or Northern Victoria or something, like you do have to provide a bit of support. But the overwhelming majority, this will assist in decluttering the education system and getting parents back involved in education as well, letting them have a say about what their kids do. Because at the moment, there's no real agency for parents, particularly in the state school. I mean, you talk about not being able to afford to go elsewhere. What's the agency for someone in the Adelaide suburbs, a mum that's not liking what their kids are being taught at a certain school? Where's their agency to be able to move their kid if they're in a state school? There's not. The agency is pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year for a private school. You can't do that either a lot of the time. So look, no system will ever be perfect, but a localized one that puts teachers, parents and principals in the room together is going to be a lot more effective than the one that we've got at the moment, where it's just top down bloat and frontline teachers are leaving because they hate their job now.